There are people who believe one single man changed the entire destiny of humanity. One man connected to the deadliest war in modern history, a war that killed tens of millions of people, a war that reshaped countries, families, borders, and the future of the world. Adolf Hitler. But today, I want to ask a question that sounds almost impossible. What if Hitler had never existed? Would World War II simply never have happened? Would history have taken a completely different road? Would millions of lives have been spared? Or have we spent decades trying to explain a global catastrophe through the face of one man? Because if a war involved dozens of countries, millions of soldiers, economic collapse, political fear, broken alliances, territorial disputes, and decades of tension, then maybe the story does not begin with him. So before we answer the question, we have to ask something darker. If it was not only Hitler, what was already waiting for him? Most people begin this story with a map of Europe in 1939. And technically, that is when the war begins. Germany invades Poland, Britain and France respond. The world starts moving toward catastrophe. But if we want to understand whether Hitler caused the war, we have to move backward. Not 1 year, not 5 years, almost 20 years. Back to the end of the First World War, when Europe was exhausted, soldiers were broken, cities were damaged, and Germany had lost. Germany lost territory. Its army was limited, its economy was pressured, its pride was shattered. Millions of people felt defeated, humiliated, and betrayed. Then came an agreement many Germans did not see as peace, but as punishment. That agreement placed a heavy weight on Germany, and the document responsible had a name: the Treaty of Versailles. And for some historians, this is where the seed of the next war was planted. Because that treaty did not only create peace, it also created resentment. It left behind a wound that millions of people could feel, even if they could not fully explain it. It created anger. It created humiliation. And humiliation, when shared by an entire population, becomes dangerous fuel. Now imagine living inside a broken country, with no stability, no pride, no money, and no clear future. Then, just when people are trying to recover, the world falls into the Great Depression. Banks fail, factories close, jobs disappear, families lose everything. The future stops feeling like a promise and starts feeling like a threat. And when a society collapses, people begin searching for simple answers to impossible problems. They look for someone to blame. They look for someone to save them. That is the kind of stage where extreme leaders can rise. Hitler did not appear in an empty space. He appeared inside a country already filled with fear, anger, wounded pride, economic pain, and the desire for revenge. So here is the uncomfortable question. If Hitler had never existed, who would have occupied that space? Some people believe great individuals change history. They believe one person can bend the world, redirect nations, and turn possibility into disaster. Others believe history creates the individuals it needs. They believe that when the pressure is high enough, someone will step forward. So did Hitler create the war from nothing? Or did the conditions for war create the possibility for someone like Hitler to appear? Before Hitler came to power, Germany was already broken. The resentment was already there. The revenge was already there. Nationalism was already growing. Millions of people were waiting for someone to promise restoration. Fear of communism was also shaping politics across Europe. Governments, parties, workers, elites, and armies were all reacting to that fear. So if Hitler disappears from history, do all those conditions disappear with him? Probably not. The crisis does not vanish just because one man is removed. The pressure remains. The anger remains. The empty space remains. And when we look beyond Germany, the picture becomes even more dangerous. The tension was not isolated, it was global. Mussolini's Italy wanted expansion, power, prestige, and a larger empire. Japan was already expanding militarily in Asia, pushing outward and challenging the balance of power. The Soviet Union was strengthening its power, building influence, and becoming one of the forces every European government had to consider. Britain and France were trying to protect their own interests, their security, their trade routes, and their empires. The entire world was unstable. Germany was not the only pressure point. It was only one part of a much larger system. Rivalry, fear, ambition, resentment, economic collapse, and territorial disputes were spreading across the planet. So maybe the real question is not simply, did Hitler cause World War II? Maybe the real question is, had the world already created the conditions for another war to become almost impossible to avoid? The answer is not simple, because one person can still change the direction, the speed, and the brutality of history. And to be clear, Hitler had a massive role. That is undeniable. He accelerated the conflict and was responsible for decisions and crimes that scarred humanity. This is not about excusing him, not for a second. It is about asking what remains if he is removed from the equation. What remains is a humiliated, bankrupt, unstable, and angry Germany. What remains is a continent full of tensions and a world already moving through crisis. And when all of that still exists, war remains possible. Maybe not the same war, maybe not at the same time, maybe not with the same shape, but possible, maybe even likely. Now imagine the alternate timeline. Hitler is never born. No speeches, no rise to power, no Germany led by him. But the wound is still there, and someone else may step onto the stage. No same name, no same face, no same symbol. But that does not mean the anger disappears. It does not mean the humiliation disappears. It does not mean the machines of history stop turning. Another nationalist, another military figure, another political movement could have filled the same empty space. Maybe the war would have had another name, another face, another flag, and a different path into darkness. That is why this question is not only about Hitler, it is about how history works. Do tragedies depend on one person, or do people appear because tragedy was already taking shape? Maybe Hitler did not create the fire from nothing. Maybe he found a continent covered in gasoline and held the match. So what do you think? If Hitler had never existed, would World War II have been avoided? Or would another leader have taken his place? Because this is not just a question about the past. It may also be a warning about the future.